Okay, so, hi, good to see everyone again. And everyone out in YouTube land, welcome or welcome back. If this is your first time, no one's here for the first time here in the analog world. If you're here for the first time in the YouTube world, don't worry about a thing. It's going to be way easier than you might have imagined. Just toss aside any notions, any preconceptions you've had about meditation and what you have to do and what's supposed to happen and how hard it might be, and just relax in the passenger seat. Uncle Dean's going to drive. Okay. Good. Before I forget, our next session will be 3 weeks from tonight, not 2 weeks because of my travel schedule. So that will be Tuesday, October 23rd. Okay, Tuesday, October 23rd. As always, you'll get a notification. By the way, you may have noticed we've got a new improved email system. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, I've got a wonderful person who has now joined the team. Her name is Jamie. She lives in Portland. She's a dear friend and someone she's a master yoga teacher, and happens to also be someone with a master background in business, like a real, actual grown-up business person, unlike me. This is a person who, I was first talking about, how am I going to get all my junk and stuff organized for you, Jamie? And I guess I'll put it in spreadsheets. She said, no. I'm going to put it in spreadsheets. She eats spreadsheets for breakfast.
Wonderful.
Yes, so this is exactly what I've been needing. So one result of that is our new improved email, now coming from Constant Contact. I keep wanting to call it Constant Comment, which was the tea that my mom drank. It was black tea with, I think, orange rind and cinnamon. Not my favorite, but... and there'll be other improvements in the way things happen. I mean, the other thing is that Jamie completely understands the teaching, what I'm doing, the core of what this is. So the idea is to help it run more efficiently and get a wider reach without losing the core of what this is about, which is, simple, open, natural, just keep the gate as wide open to everyone as possible.
Can this teach you how to be quiet and silent? Because I need to shut up. I
Yes.
got this over-talkative,
Yeah.
and there's no point to it either. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just
Well, see, you've done a wonderful thing with the very first step, which is you've recognized that.
yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. So, because a lot of people who get really invested in just talking all the time out loud and in their mind, and they don't think it's a problem. They think all this stuff is really real and really important.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So you're halfway there.
Oh, good.
You're halfway there, and then the other half is that, as you'll see in a moment, and you were here 1 or 2 sessions back, and I remember you saying afterward that you were really kind of surprised and pleased at how quiet you were able to get inside. And it's a physiological settling down. It's one thing to have again, you're halfway there, that you have the understanding that I want to feel more quietness.
It drains your energy when you do that.
Absolutely.
When you're just like blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely, it does. It drains your energy, it's like an engine. It's like a car engine that's just like running
Out of control.
Yeah, with the like how whatever it is, revs per minute. Where it's like running revved up. You need to allow the engine to cool down, and that's what happens. Not only psychologically, but physiologically when we meditate. The mind and body, because they're always connected, they settle down together. Everything gets cooled off. And as I think you experienced before, however much, even if you settle down, whether you settle down this much or you settle down this much, it feels good.
And sometimes it's really negative and I just want to stop, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
I want to just quit completely, permanently quit.
Yeah, well, you're gonna. You're gonna. You're gonna. Hang in there, and you'll see. I promise you that the stuff works. And people who've been way more caught up in blah blah than you are have found that, oh yeah, I can find the silent place inside. And because it feels good to be settled in that, I don't have to force it. I don't have to push it. I don't have to try to create it artificially.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm Bill Gates or Warren Buffett talking about something so important or something. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like this, like,
Yeah.
meaningless jibber jabber.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's all going to change. You're in the right place. Okay.
Thanks.
So thank you. So just sit back, relax, and as I say, don't do anything I don't tell you to do. Okay. There's very little to do here, and that's how we allow gravity to take over. There's a natural gravitation of the mind and the body to that more quiet, more relieved, cooled out place. And once we just get turned in that direction, just the gravity tends to naturally pull us. It feels good to remain there. So it's easy to remain there. And then more and more, as you come out of meditation, your engine tends to keep running in that cooler mode. You know, and you bring that into your activity. You bring that, the activity becomes more and more like non-activity. You know, noise, we have to talk, we have to do things out here, but it more and more feels like the silence that we experience in meditation. So, let's start with one of my two favorite mantras, the natural mantra of letting go. Okay? Done that all your life. So take a deep breath, please. Let's do that again. And if your eyes are open, let's close your eyes and do that again. Great. So now just sitting comfortably. At any point, if you feel you need to shift your position to be comfortable, go ahead. Scratch your nose, cross your legs, whatever. That's only natural. So what else is going on that's natural? Well, naturally we hear sounds. We hear the traffic going by in the street. We hear the fountain outside the door. Naturally we feel whatever bodily sensations are there. Within the body, perhaps the pressure of our weight against the chair. Whatever sensations of being warm or cool or just right. And we don't have to think about any of this or focus on it. We're not trying to be vigilant or mindful of the stuff that's there. It all comes and goes naturally within the, you could say, the screen of our awareness. So there's nothing for us to do. Just remain as we already are. Naturally open and awake, naturally aware. And whatever comes and goes within that space of natural open awareness, we'll just let it come and go. We can't stop it. Can't change it. We can't even anticipate it. See if you can decide what will be the next sound you hear. It's all out of our control. See if you can decide what will be the next thought that you have. That's out of our control too. Thoughts are just like sounds, only a little bit quieter. Nothing special about them. Just some more noise coming and going within our awareness. Perfect. So nothing to do but remain as you already are. Like the empty screen within which all the thoughts and sounds, the feelings, whatever, it all comes and goes. Like movies or shows or cartoons or something on the screen of awareness. The screen doesn't have to do anything. And the screen is not affected. If the screen is showing a movie about a beautiful waterfall, the screen doesn't get wet. If the screen's showing a movie about a raging fire, the screen doesn't burn up. So this awareness, open, simple, featureless, just like the open, simple, featureless screen. It's always there, always the space within which everything else comes and goes. So just let it come and go as it always does. You just relax into the situation as it is. Give up into the situation as it is. Not trying to block anything out or figure anything out. Not trying to concentrate or focus on anything. The empty movie screen doesn't try to block out anything that appears within the movie. The screen doesn't try to focus or concentrate on anything that appears in the movie. It's just the open space within which the movie rolls all by itself. So just remain as that open space of awareness, with no preferences. Nothing to hold on to or resist. if you find yourself thinking, oh, let me have just a little more of this or a little less of this, maybe more tranquility or fewer thoughts or something. That's just another thought. You know, if you have the thought, I need to get rid of these thoughts, that's what's known as a thought. And it's fine for that thought to be there like all the others. And we just disregard that thought like all the others. Just don't buy into it. Don't buy into anything. We're closed for business and open for awareness. Various feelings might come and go. Feelings of restlessness or tranquility or nostalgia or any kind of feeling. Fine, just more stuff appearing on the screen of awareness. Doesn't matter what the stuff is. Doesn't matter what feelings arise. Just like thoughts or sounds or sensations. We don't oppose them, don't hang on to them. We don't pick and choose among them. Just relax back into the screen, which is you, the awareness, which is you. And whatever's there on the screen, fine, perfect. We don't pay it much attention. any point, if you find yourself resisting something, anything, or trying to hang on to something, or struggling with something, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Just don't try to resolve it or get rid of it. Just relax your grip on it. Just relax your engagement with it. Relax your engagement with it. And just melt back into this silent, open space of awareness which surrounds you, which pervades you, which is you. Just melt back into that. Now keep the eyes closed. And take a couple of minutes to start gently bringing the body back up to a more active state. Like waking up in bed in the morning. Around, stretch a little, twist, whatever the body seems to require. Get the blood circulating again. When we're coming up, bringing the body up rather from the kind of depths of silence, we want to bring it up gently. Have a gentle transition so it's not a shock. And after a couple of minutes like this, when you feel ready, you can start to slowly open the eyes, taking your time. Okay, how are we doing? Good? Everybody good?
It feels a lot better to be silent. I'm surprised I don't do it more often.
Yeah.
It feels a lot better.
It feels a lot better to be silent. I'm gonna put that on the wall
I'm sure
somewhere.
Tom would appreciate it if I was like more.
Where's
more
my
like
spray
that.
spray
Wouldn't you,
paint?
Tom?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes.
So, and then the next thing you said, I'm surprised I don't do it more. So this is two takeaways from this. One is, yeah, it feels so good, it's so easy, it's so natural to settle into that. And then the second takeaway is, so it makes sense to do that often. And what's really recommended is to sit down, ideally every day. Like just set up a time like brushing your teeth. You know, what's a time where you could do it in the morning after you take your shower, or in the evening when you get home from school or work, something like that. Just good to have a time every day so that you always get to it. And then the body and the mind start to kind of get into this rhythm, kind of this momentum of, okay, sinking down into that silence, then coming back and bringing some of that silence with it. And then sinking down again the next day and coming out and bringing a little bit more out into activity. You keep doing that, going between silence and activity, and more they get integrated. More and more the activity gets pervaded by that silence. It just gets saturated with it, so that, oh, that feeling, it feels so good to be silent. You don't have to lose that when you open your eyes. More and more, that's what you feel like when you're moving around all the time. So when you see, awakened people, enlightened people, like the Dalai Lama, if you've ever seen the Dalai Lama, you notice he smiles a lot. And it's not just because you know, it's good public relations or something. It's because he's feeling the way what you contacted, what you sank down in, what you sunk down into. He's feeling that all the time. And lots of people that you know, the people who are sitting in this room who are, you know, don't have fancy names like Dalai Lama and don't wear orange robes, they're getting more and more like that in their daily lives. It's the most natural thing in the world. So, questions, comments, observations? Our friend Yeshe is not here tonight, so the floor is open for other questioners. Hi Yeshe, if you're there, we miss you.
Dean, I'm supposed to remind you about a story about
Oh!
putting out the cookies.
Yes, yes. Okay, so Dorothy is reminding me, thank you, when she was being so kind as to help set up the cookie plate and the bowl of chips. Because cookie time, 9 p.m., is a very important part of our meditation practice here. And she set up this cookie plate. It's very beautiful. It's just in beautiful rows and got the chips just so in the bowl. And then we looked over and there was one chip that one errant chip that tumbled onto the table. And we were, of course, joking. We're saying, things were going so well, now everything is ruined. And I asked her to remind me there's a Zen story about this. There's a Zen story about everything. But it's a very instructive story. So the story is, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. You have to know for background, you may be aware of this, that in the Zen tradition, which comes largely out of, China, where it was called Chan, and then Japan, where it was called Zen, and there's other countries in that area. And particularly in Japan, in the Zen tradition, it's not just about, the word Zen literally means sitting, literally means meditation. But it's not just about meditation where you're sitting with your eyes closed. There's various activities which become exactly just what I was saying, that more and more, all your activity takes on that flavor of just blissful silence, even though you're dynamically active. And in the Zen tradition, there's a number of specific activities that are, you have, for instance, flower arranging, or calligraphy, or archery. There's a famous book, Zen in the Art of Archery. And in this country, more people are familiar with the book that came later that kind of borrowed its title from that, Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Could be anything. Could be anything.
The tea ceremony.
Yes, the tea ceremony. All the ritual, the making the tea, the boiling, gathering the water, everything becomes an expression of that. It's, okay, how can I cultivate this particular kind of activity? All the martial arts. You know, I used to practice Aikido, as some of you know. It's beautiful, non-conflictive martial art with these beautiful, graceful, open, big circular movements. And when you're really doing it right, when you really kind of get in that groove, it's just like, it's like butter. You know, it's like doing nothing. And my wonderful teacher in New Jersey, the late Rick Stickles, was when he would get on the mat and to demonstrate, it was not only was he clearly there in that silent place, he was so powerful in his execution of that everyone watching it was sort of transported into that place of silence. Just beautiful. So this story is about a guy who goes to study with a Zen master who is a gardening master, okay, like Beth. He was a Zen gardening master, and the student studies with him for a certain amount of time, and then he does his final project. This is like his final exam, his senior project. So the student creates this whole garden, and the lawn is over here, and the rocks are over here, and the sand is over here, raked just so, and here's the cherry tree is over here, and it's just perfect, just beautiful. And the last thing that he does is he sees that some leaves have fallen from the cherry tree, so he rakes those all up, so the lawn is just perfect. There's not a single leaf there. And then he's so excited and proud. He goes and he gets his teacher and he brings him and he shows it to his teacher and he says, "Here it is, teacher. And if I do say so myself, I think it's perfect." And the teacher looks at it and he goes, And he grabs a limb of the tree and he shakes it so that some leaves fall randomly on the lawn. And he says, "Now it's perfect. Now it's perfect." Discuss? What do you get from that? What are you hearing from that story?
That the imperfections are part of the perfection,
The imperfections are part of the perfection.
like the towel, the shadow and the light.
Yeah.
They're
So
all-
So if the imperfections are part of the perfection, what makes it imperfection? What makes it imperfection? Let's think about this for a moment. For instance, does this chair, let's keep with the story. The leaves, which the student, before he got this powerful lesson from the gardening master, the student thought of those leaves as imperfection. Now, if we take the leaf into the lab, break it down, put it under the electron microscope, look at all the atoms there, we'll find nitrogen atoms and hydrogen atoms and carbon atoms and whatever. Are we going to find an imperfection atom? No. So that ingredient, that feature, that characteristic of imperfection is not there inherently in the leaf. So in that case, where's it coming from?
Our judgment.
Yeah, where it's coming from our judgment. It's purely a matter of judgment. Purely a matter of judgment. It's a mental category that we're projecting onto it. Okay. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Isn't it? How much of what we think we're seeing when we look out into the world is not really a feature of the world, but a feature of our conceptual overlay. It's as if, okay, here's the real image, here's the world, and we have this big piece of transparent, tracing paper. Remember tracing paper? Like a big piece of tracing paper that we lay over it, and we draw all this stuff on it and put all these labels. And then we get, and we've created all that stuff, but then we forget that we've created it. And we think it's part of what we're actually seeing. So when we recognize that it's just a thought, well, can you feel there's liberating power in that? That the world is just the world. It is what it is. And then also, as we were saying before over here, that as through practice of meditation, our psychophysiological engine is running cooler, so we're actually producing fewer thoughts. Or and being less engaged with them. And more it's just, okay, they're just thoughts.
I don't like thinking. I'd
Yeah.
rather not think about anything at all.
Yeah.
It's much more relaxing.
Yeah.
There's interesting cultural biases to the cultivation of nature. For example, in Asia, like Japan, they love the highly cultivated garden.
Right.
And nature in that way. Probably nowhere more than in North America is there a respect for the natural order of the trees and of nature naturally falling to its own sensibilities and laws. But in Asia, they wouldn't respect or admire that as much culturally, historically.
Yeah.
They like to impose their own sense of order and tidiness on it.
Yeah. I don't know as much about this as you clearly do, but from the little bit that I've read, I know that there have been some movements within the Western world, in Europe, toward more natural garden. I mean, you get somewhere, you know, if you think of like Versailles, where it's like so orderly, so symmetrical, and that has a certain kind of beauty.
Right.
But then there was, I'm trying to remember, there's a particular English gardener in the, what was it, maybe the late,
Theodore Payne.
who was it?
Theodore Payne.
Yeah, I can't remember, but for example, whoever it was, this is, I remember this because it's one of my favorite words in the English language. He made liberal use of the ha-ha. You know what the ha-ha is?
No.
Okay, the ha-ha is an invisible cow barrier. Okay, because, you know, you'd have your garden, you'd have your cultivated area, but you were trying to make it seem natural, and beyond it is the wilds and the forest, and you just wanted it to extend out. So it's all a beautiful metaphor for what we're doing with our lives and our consciousness here. So you wanted your little local garden, which we could compare with our little individual consciousness, you want it to be able to just extend out and just kind of melt into the greater world, and you don't want to fence there, just kind of putting this hard stop there around it. But you have the problem that if you don't have a fence, your cows are going to wander off, your cattle are going to wander off. And so, therefore, what you use is the ha-ha. Okay? And what the right, and the ha-ha, it's like a fence that instead of going up, it goes down. On the side where the cows are, it's a gradual, like a slope, it's like a ditch that has a gradual slope on this side, and then when you get to the bottom, on the outer rim, it's a straight vertical wall. So the cows, because if you put the straight vertical drop on this side, the cows are going to fall and, you know, break their legs. So this way, the cows can wander down, and then they just come up against this wall and they come back. But as you look out, you don't see anything. Right, and so you wonder, well, what keeps the cows here? And then if you walk over, you look at it and you say, ha-ha. And that's why it's called a ha-ha. I'm not making this up.
And where are they using it?
I'm not making this up. It's in, this was in England.
I
In
saw
this,
a whole presentation of it a few months ago, I've forgotten, but they're beautiful too,
Oh.
because they're so natural looking, but they serve a purpose.
yeah. One particular place that I happen to know where it is in the town of Bath, England. There's this, in the center of Bath, there was this architect and his father and son team of architects, and their symbol was the acorn, I think, and there's like acorns on the tops of all the buildings, and there's this beautiful like crescent-shaped array of the hotel and the buildings in the center of Bath, and then beyond it is the wide lawn, and at the perimeter is the ha-ha. So what the heck were we talking about? Oh yes, so right. The non-judgment, the freedom that comes when we realize how much of what we think is, oh, this is inherently chaotic, and this is inherently good, this is inherently ugly, inherently beautiful. It's just all concepts, it's all projection. It's all what we put on that overlay. Now, I ran into this. One of my first experiences of this was when I was about 22, 23 years old. And I went off, I flew to Mallorca, a little island in the Mediterranean that belongs to Spain. Excuse me. I was going to be there for 5 months, actually in the middle, for a retreat with my teacher Maharishi. And actually in the middle of the retreat we moved to Italy, so the first half of it was in Mallorca and then the second half was in Italy. But so we arrive in Mallorca, we arrive in the airport, the tiny little Palma de Mallorca airport, and it's about 2 in the morning, I think, and there's a couple of baggage handlers, we're waiting for our baggage to show up, and there's a couple of baggage handlers waiting around a few yards off, kind of leaning on the thing, very informal. In fact, it's so informal, they're passing around a bottle of wine. And I was with this group of most of us were young, in our early 20s, Americans. And I was very eager to get a chance to use my high school Spanish, which I had not had a lot of opportunity to do. So I go up to the baggage handlers and start, excuse me, and I start, getting friendly with them. And after a couple of minutes, they offer me the wine. I go, no thanks. And after a couple of minutes, one of them says, he points over to the group of these young Americans, and he says, excuse me, he says, ¿Por qué son tan feas las americanas? Why are the American girls so ugly? Right? And I said, no es verdad, ¿por qué lo dice? And I said, no, it's not true. Why do you say that? And he says, las españolas dan una mano completa. Right, the Spanish girls give you a real handful. Right? And this was my introduction to the cultural discrepancy that in Hispanic culture, the ideal of feminine beauty is double digits more poundage than it is in America. And certainly America at that time, which was the age of, like Twiggy. Right?
Right.
And then I realized, this is so great. Maharishi is having us do these retreats in different parts of the world. Every girl will have a chance to be beautiful when we get to the right country.
That's a good Zen story.
Yeah, that is a good Zen
It's
story.
relative.
It's all relative.
And arbitrary.
It's all relative. And it's, in a sense, it's arbitrary. In another sense, it's all kind of non-arbitrary in that it's all happened for specific historical and cultural reasons, I guess. I mean, they may be sometimes too subtle to track them all down. But I mean, for example, the Victorian age, where women wore all those skirts and they had long hair and so forth, and that got associated with the whole role of the woman in Victorian culture, which was to be at home and to have kids and so forth. And you're wearing these corsets that are giving you a 22-inch waist, so you couldn't move around much out of the house anyway. And then when we get to the 1920s, where we get the flappers, right, declaring their independence from Victorian grandma, and they were bobbing their hair. Famous short story by F. Scott Fitzgerald from the 20s, from the book called Bernice Bobs Her Hair. Right, that's Bernice's big declaration of independence. And then getting rid of all those old, petticoats and skirts, and wearing, and having this more boyish. This is when the bra first became popular. And the bra in the 20s was not there to accentuate the breast, it was to flatten the breasts. It was to give the woman a more boy-like, it's like, okay, I'm not a milk-producing machine. I can be, and that's equivalent to, I can be out in the world having a life that's independent of my reproductive functions, right? And that became the standard of beauty. Yeah.
This is kind of back to the guardian discussion, it kind of fits with the flapper era too. Isn't there something in human nature that kind of wants to shape our environment, or wants to maybe not go for perfection, but to have an influence in judging what we think of as an ideal world for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to repeat this for our YouTube friends in case you didn't hear it. Isn't there something natural in human consciousness, in human life, to want to shape our environment, decorate our home, dress ourselves a certain way? Sure. It's only human. But it's only human. Okay? It's relative. And it's great. It's great, I mean, so I'm wearing a blue shirt. If you pay attention to the shirts I wear, and I hope no one has been, you see, You'll almost never see me in anything except a blue shirt or a green shirt, because I seem to look best in those colors. You will definitely never see me in an orange shirt or a yellow shirt. They're terrible colors on me. Okay, I just went shopping and bought a couple of shirts today, and I picked the colors very, very deliberately. This house is decorated in a certain way that Yafa and I like. Okay, it's only human, and it's great, but it's only human. It's not absolute. It's not as the great sage Sly Stone said, different strokes for different folks. Okay, and that's important, I think, to recognize that, okay, this is my taste, and this is here for, as we were saying before, all these historical reasons, cultural reasons, the family that I grew up with, whatever. A lot of factors that may be too complex and too subtle for us to ever know them all or calculate them all, but we can put them all under one heading. It's our conditioning. And my conditioning is going to shape me, my relative being, my tastes, my tendencies, what books I like to read, what movies I like to go to, what ways I express myself. My conditioning is going to shape all of that. And your conditioning is going to be somewhat different, so it's going to shape your human expression differently. Now,
so is it speaking to someone who has no tolerance of a diversion from their version of how they set their space?
Right. So that's exactly the next important question. What about people who have no tolerance for people whose conditioning is different? And that is a big, big problem in the world today. Okay, I mean, this is how a lot of wars start. This is it. When they have no tolerance, that's called intolerance. Okay, and to really understand how that works and how to solve that, I think there's no way to understand it and solve it without reference to this awakening process that we're engaged in here.
But taking it to countries in war, has interesting ramifications where it probably would push all our buttons. There's certain things people could be doing to other people in countries where we would go, oh, we feel obligated, we have the ability to send our soldiers to stop it.
Yeah.
There's certain
How's that working out for us?
Well, a lot of time, for example, in India, at one point they were burying when a man died, they buried his wife with him. And the British were hanging them for that. And they said to the British, it's our custom to do that. And they said, it's our custom to hang people who murder women.
Yeah. They didn't bury him, by the way. The idea was it was called sati. The widow was supposed to throw herself into the fire, into the funeral fire. Yeah.
But the Westerners put a stop to it because it was a leaf they weren't willing to accept.
Yeah. And this stuff happens, and this is the history of the world. The cultures can make contact, and their practices are different, and they duke it out. And sometimes, down the road in hindsight, we'll say, well, this was an improvement when this culture brought this in. Sometimes we'll say, no, this made things worse when this culture brought this in. So to say totally, okay, whatever you guys want to do is fine, you're going to kill people or whatever, that's not absolute either. But to have no tolerance for other, okay, I like, let's say, this religion, and anyone who likes another religion, that I can't tolerate that. People used to argue about, Apple versus Windows, and that was like religions, or Beatles versus Stones. What's wrong? How can you think the Stones are better, right? And it's so silly. But I think that real hardcore intolerance comes from people identifying with their conditioning. And identify is the key word here. In other words, when you think that the conditioning is you, then when someone else comes along with different conditioning that they're equally committed to, that seems like a contradiction of your conditioning, then if you've identified with your conditioning, if you think your taste in rock and roll bands or religions or whatever is who you are, what you are, then the other ones are a threat to you. They're an existential threat. They're threatening your very existence. And that's why discovering that, okay, my conditioning is here, that's my human expression, but it's not what I am. It's not what I am. It's just how I express. It's what I am is the unconditioned. What I am is pure, is the level of silence beneath the thoughts, beneath the conditioning. That's what I am. And that's been there in the background, behind the conditioning all the time. But it's just, you know, we tend to get, our attention tends to go to the shiny objects, the moving objects, the things that have characteristics. Our conditioning has characteristics. The boundless beingness has no characteristics. That's what's so freeing about it. That's why when we settle down into it, as you were saying, it feels so good. It's such a relief. It's so refreshing to get below the level of all that noise. So the more we do that, it doesn't mean that your conditioning goes away. And this is very important because it's a big misunderstanding. A lot of on the spiritual path or the awakening path, people often make that mistake of thinking, oh, an awakened person, a person who's become completely in touch with the unconditioned true self, true beingness, living that 24/7, that person has no conditioning. That's not true. That's not true. The conditioning will still be there. Right? So, you know, if you're an awakened person who grew up in India eating rice and vegetables and curry, you'll probably still, that'll be your taste. If you grew up like one of my wonderful teachers, Muji, who grew up in Jamaica eating barbecue, he's an awakened person who still likes to eat barbecue. Okay? So the conditioning is still there. But the difference is, you know, it's just conditioning. You don't identify yourself as it. You're back here. The conditioning is here, so to speak. You're back here. You're just open space. Whenever that open space expresses, it keeps winding up expressing. And you know, we could say it's colorless, it's silent, but it keeps expressing in these particular colors, in these particular playing these particular notes. But your relationship with the conditioning becomes looser, more playful. It's more fun. It's, you know, you're seeing it. Oh, there's that. There's that. It's funny. Every time I open my mouth, you know, words come out in this particular way, in this Dean way if I'm Dean, or in this Beth way if I'm Beth. You know, but hallelujah, that's not I, that's Dean. That's all this person, all this stuff that, you know, and it's like my person, my little character shows up on the screen, and your little character, the Sue Ellen character, shows up on the screen so they can interact. Hi, how you doing? Gee, let's have some cookies and tea. Or whatever, they can interact on that human level as characters in the movie, characters moving around on the screen. And that's fine. It's not so fine if you're totally identified with it and you think that that's what you are and that's all you are. Partly because the movie always has the same ending for every character, which is, and then she died. Right? Bummer. Okay? I always loved, you know, the fairy tales that we learned as a kid, which always ended, and they lived happily ever after. Think about that phrase. They lived happily ever after. So evidently they lived forever, and they were in a constant state of happiness. You know, and that's the thing you heard so many times that probably as a kid, that we don't think about it much. That's a rather wildly optimistic
Yes.
statement.
But there were those other fairy tales, where people were vanquished and killed violently,
But,
burned in ovens.
oh yeah. There's all the grim fairy tales.
Yes.
Yeah, which were really grim.
They-
Yeah, yeah. Those all came out of like the Black Forest of Germany or something. Yeah, there were those too. But we tended to get the sanitized, Disney kind of versions. They lived happily ever after. Or even just think of, Hollywood films, romantic comedies, which
Yes.
end with, okay, and then despite all the seemingly insurmountable obstacle, boy and girl finally get together and they walk off into the sunset
And
together.
live happily ever after.
And implied is they live happily after, and Hugh Grant and what's her name, and it's great. We don't see them the next morning when they wake up and her hair is in curlers and he's reading the Wall Street Journal and they both got bad breath because they haven't brushed it right. We don't see that. We arbitrarily, or not arbitrarily, we very deliberately set this limit. It's like the fence.
Yeah.
We set this limit around the story. We just want to see this far, and we can call that happily ever after. But on another level, there could be a very deep wisdom in that. There's an intuition that there should be, that there must be on some level a way that where you really are happy ever after, where you don't die and you're in a state of perpetual happiness. And in fact, that's the case. It's called awakening, realization, enlightenment, nirvana, moksha. How do you not die? How do you live forever? You realize you're not the character on the screen that dies, you're the screen. You're the screen that is behind the movie. And that stuff comes and goes, moments come and go, scenes come and go, bodies come and go, and you're not any of that. When you're truly awake to what you are, when you're truly awake that you're boundless awareness, boundless beingness, then everything else is stuff that comes and goes on that screen. This chair comes and goes. If it's a nice chair, I'm glad it's here. Someday this chair will, be dust or it'll be in a junk heap. And I won't be heartbroken because I'm not that chair. The chair's just an object.
Is your awareness dependent on your senses still
No.
being functioning?
No. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Is your awareness dependent on the functioning of your senses, or for that matter, any other aspect of the physical organism? And the revolutionary, totally subversive, totally flip your universe upside down answer is no.
How do you validate that?
Experience.
And what about
Experience. You
thoughts?
can't, hang on, I'm gonna stay with this. This is important. Okay, you validate it with experience. You've had glimpses of that experience. The fact that you've been coming here, you've been doing meditation in your life, every time you settle into meditation with some lesser or greater degree of clarity, sometimes less clarity, sometimes more clarity. There's this settling into this place where your body's not there. Your body's not there. Happens when you fall asleep. Your body's not there. The body has disappeared from the screen of experience. The body's not there. The world is not there. All that's there is awareness, beingness. It's silent, it has no characteristics, has no colors, no features, no nothing. And then you come back to your body, and that's a big transition, which is why I always emphasize take a couple of minutes to kind of, bring the body, get the body back up to speed. Okay?
But if we put some receptors on your head, we could measure the brain waves.
Mm-hmm.
And in a deep meditation or sleep, they would change from your waking state.
right?
But if we did that to someone who's dead, it would be a flat line.
Yep. In our experience, that's what we're experiencing. And then looking at the scope, and there's the flat line and all that, is a feature of our experience in the waking state. There's no way to demonstrate this. But as people get more and more familiar, experientially familiar, through their own direct experience, with this place, and you know, the word place is in quotation marks, but with this boundless beingness, boundless awareness, Satchit Ananda, boundless beingness equals boundless awareness equals boundless bliss, for lack of a better word in the English language. As it gets clearer and clearer to you that this is always here behind the activity, and this is what I am, and this exists, and this is, I don't even want to say, if we say this exists independent of other things, it's reifying it. It makes it seem like that's a thing, an object that exists. It doesn't exist, it's existence. It's existence. It becomes more and more, as it becomes more and more clear to you in your meditative experience, and more as you're remaining in that place, so to speak, as you come out into activity, there's a growing conviction that none of this stuff is what I am, including the body, including the physical organism. And this is explains something that otherwise has been a mystery all our lives, which is we've known since a young age that there have been sages, right? We've known, at least vaguely, that, oh, there's been Buddha, and there's been Jesus, and there's been Socrates, and all that. And we've also known, even if you haven't read one page about them, or read their philosophy, somehow we know one thing that all these awakened sages have in common. And I just mentioned several men, a lot of them are women, Anandamayi Ma, Mother Teresa. One thing they all have in common is they don't seem to have a lot of anxiety about dying, right? Don't you just know that intuitively about the Dalai Lama?
Right.
Wouldn't it be hard to imagine that the Dalai Lama is really nervous about dying? It just doesn't compute. You know that's not the case. Intuitively, you know it's not the case. What does the Dalai Lama know? Socrates know? Amma, wonderful awakened woman sage in India right now. What is it that they know that other people don't know? And of course, it can't be just some knowledge that you can get from a book. It's the experiential knowledge, which is, oh, this body's not me. When this body drops off, there's a famous story, some of you have heard me tell this story, about Sri Ramana Maharshi, great 20th century enlightened sage in India. And when he was dying of cancer, he had cancer in his arm, and was not interested in getting medical treatment. I'm done with this body. I don't think he didn't even take pain medication. And when he was getting toward the end of his life, he's lying there dying, and his disciples are around him, and they said, Bhagavan. And Bhagavan means blessed one, which is a holy one. It's the kind of a customary way to address a revered person, an enlightened person in Indian culture. So they'd say, Bhagavan, Bhagavan, please don't leave us. Please use miraculous powers to heal yourself. Please don't leave us, Bhagavan. And he replied, what a shame. They think Bhagavan is this body. They think Bhagavan somehow could leave them. Where could I go? Right? Where can I go? Where can the screen leave the movie? Where can a character can leave the movie? Every character eventually will leave the movie. But the screen can't leave them. The screen is never in the movie.
If the screen isn't in the Bhagavan, How would you define screen?
Satchidananda, boundless beingness, boundless awareness, within which this whole movie that we call the world, populated by, you know, objects and bodies, and out of all those bodies, one of them we've identified with, takes place. You know, when you go to a movie, and the first thing that happens is the lights go down. That's for two reasons, an obvious reason and a non-obvious reason. The obvious reason, the lights go down so that the display on the screen will be brighter.
So it's a collective consciousness.
Wait, let me go with this, I'm going somewhere. So the lights go down for one reason, the screen is brighter. The second reason the lights go down at the beginning of the movie is so that you stop seeing your body. You stop seeing this body called Tom that you've been identifying with, so you can look up at the screen and see, you know, Bradley Cooper or whoever, and for 2 hours identify with him. That's why when Bradley Cooper's in danger, your heart pounds. When Bradley Cooper triumphs, you say, ah, and you laugh and you smile and you feel good. Why the hell should you care about the fate of a two-dimensional figure up on a screen? It makes no sense unless you have identified with him. Okay? But at the end of the movie, that's all gone and the screen remains. Okay? So then this movie is just a three-dimensional movie, and it's a little longer than 2 hours. Okay? It's one way to think of it. Okay? You've chosen at the beginning of this movie, you know, everyone, you were lying there in the cradle, and your mom said, hi Tommy, and your dad said, hi Tommy, hey, coochie coo Tommy, you're so cute. And after a while, you hear that enough times from these big faces with these deep authoritative voices, you figure, well, I must be this Tommy thing they keep talking about. You identify with it. And that's as it must be, you know, so when you run into the street, they can yell, hey Tommy, and you stop. We live our human life. We have our human existence. And that's great. It's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. But it's a drag if we're complete. I mean, the reason that you're here sitting in this room is one way or another, everyone in this room, everyone that's, you know, out here in TV land following this, is doing this because one way or another we've started coming up against the intolerable limits of life in the movie. There's something about just being the character in the movie that is unsatisfactory. And for some people, it has to be really something hard. So some people have to really bottom out. So they have to bottom out in addiction, or they have to have a disastrous romantic relationship, you know, hitting the rocks, or they lose their job, or they have a financial crisis, some crisis in their life. A lot of people have to really have a crisis in the movie to go, is there something else beyond this movie? Because this sucks. You know, some people are, you know, have the good fortune that the movie doesn't have to get really horrible before they start asking those questions. And sometimes there's just something that doesn't add up. If you ever see The Truman Show, okay, which I love, actually I have a chapter, but you know, I have this book, Cinema Nirvana, I have a chapter about that. And he's going along fine, and he's got his wife and his kids and his life and all that. And one day, something falls out of the sky. And he looks at it, and it's a light, like a studio, you know, a light that you'd have in a movie studio, and it's marked Sirius, I think, you know, S-I-R-I-U-S, you know, the star Sirius. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. This is all, you know, that's like his first clue. Something's not adding up here.
That's a good book. I liked your book, that one. I like that
You,
book.
you like Cinema Nirvana? Thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing
Really,
that.
really fun.
So you hearing this? This is like resonating for you? You know,
I hear it. I think
yeah.
I understand it. I as far as resonating, for me, I mean, you do come up against things in your life that make you look for a better way. But I think also, some of the meditation that was introduced too early was just kind of benign, and then found that, oh, this is valuable and enhances my experience of life. Although all the sages you all mentioned believe in the immortality of the soul or some version of it, I personally don't.
That's
And-
fine.
and
Yeah.
it hasn't
No, they
taken me
didn't. They
there.
yeah, they did. It's not that they believed in the immortality of the soul. Belief has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with belief. Belief is just another thought. Screw belief.
Or felt it.
Now you're talking. Yeah, but when we say felt, we want to be clear. We don't mean just a hunch or an emotion. It means the experience of the way I experienced this book. And you can't, and a person who is having that experience, and some of you may have had that, at least glimpses of that, where it's so clear, the experience of what you are is so clear that it's beyond time, beyond space, beyond cause and effect, beyond the physical organism, that you know that what you are can never die because it was never born.
But I don't trust that. I would call that my imagination, and then I need to be able to validate it with some kind of empirical evidence to follow through with it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and right, and then it sounds like a completely reasonable report,
But I find,
but a
Yeah,
completely reasonable report when you haven't yet had this clear, convincing, experiential
I'm open to it
blast that I'm
happening, but
talking
in the
about.
meantime, I find meditation enhances my life
Yeah,
experience.
and that's great. If you
Well,
know,
I
a
have
lot of
one.
people, especially these days, a lot of people start meditation because it makes life in the movie a better movie, makes it a more pleasant movie. God bless. God bless. You know, you great, and it lowers your blood pressure, and you communicate better with people, and your relationships get better. You've experienced probably all of this. You probably, as someone who's very much engaged in sports activity, you probably found even that your athletic performance gets enhanced, and that's great. And for a lot of people, that's how they get into the tent. And I go, God bless. If that's all you're interested in, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. For me personally, if that's all there was to it, I would never be interested. But I'm a weirdo. I've been in just, for me, I've been all about liberation for almost as long as I can remember.
Have all the high-end meditators, if we could call them that,
Yeah.
just to put a handle on it,
Yeah.
are they all in the same, gone the same direction that you have? I think they have, right? They're not just for the experience itself, but the implication of
Well,
Eternity.
eventually, if they become, as you say, high-end meditators.
I didn't know what else to call
Okay,
them.
if let's say, no,
Let's
I
put some hierarchy in.
really quality, high quality goods.
Gold medal.
Okay, can we say, are we talking about awakened people who've fulfilled?
That really puts hierarchy on it, but accomplished or
And yeah, it's
veterans
not
or-
hierarchy. No, it's not. It's not hierarchy. It's just a thing that happens. It's a thing that happens. And it's not even. And it's not a thing. And it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But rather you awake to the fact that this is how it's always been. There's always at some point the forehead slapping moment. The forehead slapping moment where you go, wait, this is what's been all along. How did I miss it? And you can't explain that to people who've not had that, okay? But they might not all express it this way. They might not be into the, and again, this has to do with what we were saying before, conditioning being different strokes for different folks. Some people are going to be much more into the intellectual expression of it, the intellectual understanding, the verbal description of it, and so forth. Some people, there might be a fully awakened person who says, like if we could, whatever, slap the EEG on them if you can measure it with that, which you probably can't. But if somehow we could know this one is completely awakened, and just ask them, well, what do you think about immortality of the soul, or however you want to put it? I go, I don't know, but I don't know, everything's fine. They might just express it in those simple terms. You know, you might just be, whatever, an awakened garbage man. All I know is I'm collecting the garbage and, you know, whistling a happy tune. Fine, fine. But if you cross-examine them, if you ask them about it, if you really ask them, are you worried about dying? No. Well, why not? And, you know, they might have never, in terms of thinking, because the thinking doesn't matter, but in terms of thinking, they may not have ever thought about it before. But if you bring it to their attention, are you worried about dying? No, I'm just collecting the garbage, whistling a happy tune. Well, what's going to happen when you die? I don't know, it's fine. It's just, you know, if something drops off, I don't know. You know, they might describe it like that. You know, because it's not so superficial as intellectual understanding, or you know, going for a particular creed or something like that. Okay, so our next session is going to be 3 weeks from tonight. 3 weeks from tonight, October 23rd. Also, our October 28th silent day-long retreat here, there's about 2 spots left. So if you're interested in that, maybe talk to me afterward. Okay? So may all beings swiftly realize what they are, the screen, not the character. That which is undying because it's unborn. That which is beyond cause and effect, beyond suffering, beyond problems. And when we realize we're not characters, we're the screen, then only characters can be in conflict. When you realize I'm the screen, you're the screen, there's only one screen. So how can we possibly be in conflict? And thus, may peace spontaneously and naturally come to prevail everywhere throughout this world and all possible worlds. And the traditional Sanskrit language for that wish. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.